Hey guys, it's Jeff from San Diego Seed Company and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do a video that I wanted to do for a long time. It's finally the right time to talk about garden planting. Now when some of you think about garden planting, you're like, what do you mean planting? I just throw seeds out, I grow whatever I want, and it's totally fine. I, on the other hand, like to know exactly what I'm going to grow throughout the year, when I'm going to grow it, for several reasons, which I will get into during the video. But before we start with all this fun stuff, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified anytime that we put out new content. Alright, so let's get into it. I use 2 pieces of software every single season for all of my garden planning needs, and they are Google Sheets and the Farmer's Almanac Garden Planner. Now before I show you the ins and outs of how I personally plan my garden, let's stop and think for a second. Why is it important to plan your garden at all? Like I said in the intro, why not just buy seeds, put them in the ground, and then see what grows and what doesn't, and then do that each season? Knowing how much space I have, how long things take from seed to harvest, is going to allow me to maximize the amount of food that I'm able to grow. Because if I have space used for a certain plant and then it just sits dormant because I haven't planned well, that's wasted space. More than likely you're probably watering that space because your drip system is all in the same zone. So you're really missing out by not planning. And so I want to get into some of the details of what I use every year so you guys could not miss out when you're planting your garden. So let's start with the garden planner. It is put out by the Farmer's Almanac. Yes, it does cost, so if you're trying to garden on a budget, maybe use graph paper and draw things out. But I highly recommend, this is going to be my first tip, draw out your space to scale so you know how much actual space that you have to grow. Every seed packet is going to show the spacing. If you've got a 10-foot row and a plant is supposed to be planted every foot, you know you can put 10 plants in there. The beauty about the garden planner is it does all of that for you. So let's take a look. This is my garden from last year. This is the fall garden. You'll notice here that I've got it set up by month, and I'm going to just go in November because almost everything for the fall is going to be into the ground in November. So you'll see that I have drawn out every piece of garden space that we have, and if you look right here, it is to scale. So I literally went outside with a measuring tape, measured how wide each box was, how long each drip line was, each row, and have a pretty solid estimation of how much space I have. And that what I really love about this garden planner, if we zoom in here, let's just go into these broccolis. You'll see as I go smaller or bigger, it's going to take away or add plants, and that's based on broccoli being planted 18 inches apart. Let's see what it says. So spacing, single plants, 1 foot 6 inches, that's 18 inches. So I know that when I'm planting out my broccoli that I'm not going to have them too close together, or I'm not wasting space. I'm getting exactly the number of broccoli that I need based on the space that I have. Alright, so that's cool. Spacing taken care of. What I also love is that I can type in any vegetable, they have it. So let's say I didn't want tatsoi. I can just delete that, take beet, and pull it over here. And again, it's going to tell me exactly how many beets that I'm going to plant in, let's get it up to 4 feet. In 4 feet, you can get 12 beets. Now, admittedly, I do not use every tool that is available on this garden planner. There is so much. You can get really deep into the weeds. They have things like suggested planting times based on our zone. So when I signed up, I said where I lived, and they took exactly my street address, said, okay, you're 10B. So when I'm planting my yellow Granix onions, I know that I'm going to want to sow indoors October, November, December, and sow them outdoors January, February, March, April, May, June, and then it shows you where to harvest. We've talked about companion planting on the channel before. A lot of it is pseudoscience, but sometimes pseudoscience is right. Just because there hasn't been a study done doesn't mean it's not a good idea to listen to what others have had success with. So this program suggests fenugreek, whatever the heck that is, and marigolds to onions. So then when I'm planting, I'm like, oh, okay, there's my onions. It might be nice to put my marigolds there. I could type in marigolds and drag them on over. Okay, so let's take a look at one other thing that's really great. This section here is specify in-ground dates, And so if I don't check that and I put a plant onto my garden plan, it's going to stay there all year round. So for onions, I'm going to plant them in October, and I know I'm going to harvest them in June. So let's keep our eye on these onions right here. I'm going to change the month to July, and they disappear. So the beauty of that is that you can plant a cool season and a warm season on the same year, and you don't have a lot of overlap if you specify the in-ground dates for each crop. Which leads me into the next value add that this software offers, is being able to succession plant. For me, it would be almost impossible to execute succession planting if I didn't know where all of my crops are going to be and during what dates. Now, some of you who have smaller container gardens, let's say you just have a 4x8 box and that's all you have, you can probably keep track of that. But as you grow, as you get more space, which most gardeners do, they start out small and go bigger, I highly recommend at some point drawing out your space, getting a layout, so then when you are succession planting, you know exactly how much room you have and when the plants are going to come out, and you can backdate when you start those seeds so you have new starts ready as soon as you're going to harvest that first crop. Let's flip over to my Excel spreadsheet and I can show you how I plan out my garden with Excel and how I input it into the garden planner. So here you can see this is my Garden Tracker 2023. It sounds really official. You can see that I have all my crops listed in the first column, whether or not they're direct sown, the spacing, and then the next three columns are first start date, the number of plants, and where they're going to be in the garden. So you can see on January 28th, I know that I'm going to start 6 cells of basil, and once they're up and ready, I'm going to put them in the southwest raised bed. And you'll notice as I scroll down, the next 3 columns is second start date, number of plants, and second garden location. Some things I have succession planted and some things I have not. So what's beautiful about this is, let's say you're somebody who is really into maximizing your garden production. You could easily get 4 or 5, 6 different crops of radishes because they're so quick. And if you stagger them every week, then every week you're going to get a new row of radishes ready to eat. Okay, so let's scroll past this bar and get to the cool season, which is this year. You'll notice that I am just a little bit behind. I've only got 5 of these filled out. I do know what I'm going to grow this year, and I do know when I have to start the seeds, but I don't yet know where I'm going to put them in the garden, which is for me one of the funnest parts. So carrots, dragon variety, I'm going to start them on October 8th. So let me go over to my garden planner, and I'm just going to pick a random spot. I don't know if this is where I'm actually going to grow them, but for the video, let's say I'm going to grow it in this bottom, what I call the Tetris bed. Another beautiful thing about this is it will show you when you have had similar crops in the same space in years before, so you know not to plant there, which I think is really cool. So instead of putting them here, I'm going to put them over here next to my arugula. Looks like I can fit 14 carrots in that space. I'm going to go here to variety and just see if they have dragon on here. They actually have a lot. You see, there it is. What I love about putting the variety on the map view is that it shows up when you look, you can see what variety it actually is, and I don't have to do any kind of garden marker. I know that if I follow this, I plant a dragon there, they're not going anywhere, there's always going to be dragon, so if I'm ever wondering what I'm about to harvest, I can always come here and see. Okay, so now let me flip back over to Excel or Google Sheets. And I'm going to put 14 in there because I know that's how many I'm going to keep. Now with carrots, as we all know, you're going to overseed and then you're going to thin down to 14. But since I'm a nerd, I'm going to put in 14 there. And then I'm going to say Tetris bed south. So now I know that on October 8th, I'm going to plant carrot, the dragon variety, in Tetris south, and eventually I'm going to get 14 carrots after the days to harvest are complete. Okay, so now I've got a lot of work to do. I've got to decide where my carrots, cabbage, celery, cilantro, garlic, kale, lettuce, green onion, bulbing onion, parsley, peas, radishes, and spinach. I mean, that is delicious. Some people love spring gardens. I love fall gardens because I just think the food is tastier. It's a lot easier. There's no bugs. But anyway, I don't want to get onto a rabbit trail of my love for the fall garden. Once I have all of my crops and the dates that I'm going to plant them and how many I've planted them, I have made another spreadsheet that I'll show you now. And I've just copied and pasted each crop in order of the date. So what that does for me is I don't have to go through and look at the entire plan and try to find every September 24th or every October 15th. I do that all at once. So I know when the weekend's coming and Sunday, September 24th shows up, I know that I'm gonna have to do 18 arugula Rockies, 10 broccoli Waltham 29, 10 Steve's Tender Early, and so on and so forth. And so I know that I'm gonna have to do 68 cells that weekend. Let me show you exactly how I make it even easier for myself, which will allow you to do some work beforehand so it doesn't make the planting process tedious and laborious. You're already prepared. You can go out and just sow seeds. So for every one of these lines, I'm going to say arugula Rocky. I'm going to put the date that I will start them, 9/24, and I am going to put in parentheses down here how many I need. So that's probably hard to read, but once I do every one for that specific date, I'm gonna have a stack of these. I don't need to take my computer out to the garden. I can just take these and I know what I'm planting and how many of them. So that's a little taste of how I plan out my garden. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you will check out the garden planner. Again, it's put out by the Farmer's Almanac. There is a little cost, but for me, with a garden our size, it has been more than valuable. So before we go, I really just want to ask you guys, what are some tips? How do you guys keep organized? I use a computer. My dad has a journal going back years and years and years of dates and suggestions and, oh, I planted them too early or too late. We really want to hear what you guys do. Not only are we trying to teach you guys, but we want to learn from you guys as well and continue growing and get better in the garden.